Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where we tackle a wide variety of topics on this podcast every single day. But ultimately, there's one common theme, and that is how technology creates value and solves real-world problems in our lives, work, and indeed world. And at the moment, we are living in a very exciting times because of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that power to make sense of vast quantities of data in ways that we could never have imagined just a few years ago. So many businesses are now working out how they can unite data points from many applications and customer touch points and try and obtain insights from all of them by uniting that data. And joining that data up is where APIs come in, and why many say we're living in the age of those application programming interfaces. And the average enterprise currently has 2 or 3 API management vendors, according to recent research. And they also plan to adopt more soon, with 40% of organisations having 3 or more API management vendors. And most don't intend to consolidate anytime soon to a single vendor. So complexity is growing. But today's guest is going to argue that it's also an opportunity. Today, Jana from Axway, a leading enterprise integration company, is going to join me on the podcast to talk about how API ecosystem complexity, if left unmanaged, is slowing down enterprises and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Italy, where Jana is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. And hey, Neil, and hello, Neil's listeners. So I'm excited to be on this show. And to introduce myself, I am the product marketing lead for API management at Axway. And Axway is a provider of API management and integration solutions. We are serving about 11,000 customers globally, and we are recognized as a leader by some of the key analyst firms.
Fantastic. And there's so much I'm looking forward to chatting with you about today. But before I do dive straight into what you're doing here, I always ask my guests to share their origin story. So can I ask that you tell me where your passion for technology came from and ultimately what put you on this path that you're on today?
So I think my background is a little bit unusual because I'm actually a lawyer by training. And I started my career in Brussels, where I worked on energy and climate change. And I thoroughly enjoyed that role, but ultimately I needed something more tangible. And I joined an energy software company in London as a product marketer. And I really found my calling because I love how diverse and intellectually stimulating this role is. And then 2 years ago, I moved to France and I joined Axway, where I'm today. And I think what I really love about the tech sector is so my partner calls me an overachiever. I constantly need to be productive. And I think this is really what attracts me to the tech sector because it's fast moving and it enables so much change in the world and you never stop learning. So it's fascinating every day for me.
What a great story. I love that how you've gone from the legal world, product marketing, technology, API. It's fantastic. And a lot of people do say we're living in the age of API now, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. And everyone wants to unite the data and connect all the data from all those different applications. But just to set the scene and get everybody on the same page, can you tell me a little bit more about exactly what an API is?
That's a very good question because I think we're going to utter that word a lot. Yeah. So the example I like to use to explain what an API is a concierge at a hotel. So imagine you stay at a hotel and you need to find different services. So you speak to the concierge to get connected. And this could be something available internally, provided by the hotel, like dinner reservations, or external to the hotel, like golf or theater tickets. And essentially, the concierge simplifies your access to these different services. And APIs are essentially the concierge of the digital world. It enables businesses to speak the same language, and it really powers the global digital economy and ecosystems. Like APIs is really what enable, for example, the rise of fintech. And I think my favorite statistic that I feel really drives the point home is the fact that eBay actually generates 60% of its revenue through APIs. So I really see APIs as the glue of the digital world.
And it's a problem that businesses all over the world are tackling with right now. But can you tell me about the complexity in the typical API ecosystem for a business? Because, again, it's a hot topic right now, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a trend that I think has been growing for a while, but we've really noticed it only recently, or we've become aware of it. And so at the beginning, how it all started is that there was a guy or a gal or a business unit, and they heard about APIs and they decided to give it a go because, it has so many different benefits. And they did see amazing results, like faster and bigger revenue or better customer experiences, like you name it, all of it. And the other business units heard about it and decided to follow suit. So they adopted their own APIs, and then the company bought new applications that may have come with their own set of APIs. So the couple of APIs they had at the beginning suddenly turned into hundreds of APIs across different business units, regions, impacting hundreds of different applications. And then some of the business units adopted different API management solutions to manage these APIs. And then you fast forward a few years, and what you see is that the average company relies on 3 different API management vendors today, and this will actually grow. Not to mention the APIs that are not managed by anyone, they're just in the wild. So today you have these extremely complex environments, and this is true for pretty much every enterprise.
And presumably then, if all that complexity is left unmanaged, does it slow businesses down?
Absolutely. So we've actually just done a global survey on the topic. And there are so many different pain points that stems from this complexity. And I tend to split them into 3 different ones: productivity, scalability, and security. So to start with productivity, the power of APIs is that they are reusable. So anyone who is given access to the API can use it and leverage it. So instead of building something from scratch or new integration, you just reuse what exists and you put it, you make it part of your own application or new product. But to be able to do that, you need to know that that API exists in the first place. And you need a really easy approval process to understand who needs access, who to give access, how these people are using these APIs. And the thing is that with the complex system, no one has an overview of what exists where. And this is incredibly expensive because the average cost to build an API is actually $30,000. So imagine that you build it from scratch because you don't know it already exists somewhere else. So it really slows down productivity massively. Then the second pain point I mentioned is scalability. So with so many different solutions across the different business units and regions, and everyone has different approaches and designs and preferences, it's really hard to scale innovation from a single business unit across the whole enterprise or the partner ecosystem. And thirdly, security is a big pain point tied to this IT and API complexity. Because simply you cannot secure what you don't know exists. And APIs, as much as great they are, they have, they've sort of been behind some of the key data breaches we've seen over the last few years. So it's incredibly important to secure that access and know what exists where.
And I would imagine that for a lot of people listening, especially because we live in this world of one-click checkouts and Netflix and Spotify know what we want to do. Everything's completely simplified. So you would think that a lot of businesses would want to simplify their APIs. But I read that you advise enterprises not to simplify that complexity, but master it and control it, which really captured my attention. So can you expand on that?
I agree that at a first glance, simplification seems way more logical.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's realistic. And that's why mastering the complexity, embracing it, I think is the smarter way to go than simplification. And I actually did research on this last year. I spoke with several companies from different sectors and industries and countries to understand why this complexity happens. And the thing is that the complexity happens for very good reasons. And the reasons will never go away. Just to give you an example, it's really, for example, the need for local autonomy. Each business unit or region within an enterprise faces different conditions and challenges and goals and need to partner with different people and companies. And so they will look for different things in their APIs and their API management solutions. So this is a very good reason why we should embrace that complexity. And going down the simplification path means that the business unit or region has to adapt to the technology choices of the company rather than have technologies support what they really want to do. So that's why I think mastering the complexity is a more realistic approach and more desirable one for enterprises than the simplification.
And I read that the average enterprise actually has 2 or 3 API management vendors and plans to adopt more soon, and something that you strengthened in your comments at the beginning of this podcast. But if 40% of organizations have 3 or more API management vendors and most don't intend to consolidate to a single vendor throughout the enterprise, it's no surprise really that complexity is growing. But can you tell me more about why you actually see that as more of an opportunity, right?
Absolutely. I think the opportunity lies in managing or mastering that complexity.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before, we just did a global survey. We asked 800 senior decision makers, both in IT and line of business. I should give a shout out to Vince and Byrne. We did the survey with them. And basically in the survey, we asked the question around the benefits of mastering the complexity. And we heard about 21 different benefits that ranged from improved security, business agility, faster innovation, better customer experience, and about 20 other more. So it's really, there is a lot of opportunity there. And to provide a concrete and tangible example, so integration complexity was the number one reason why launches of digital projects are delayed. And we found a strong correlation in the survey between companies that have mastered their technology complexity and the number of digital launches. So, for example, companies who reuse APIs launch twice as many digital projects a year as companies who don't reuse their APIs. Or companies who onboard new partners within a day or so launch over 40 digital projects a year. Whereas companies who take weeks or months to do the same launch, they launch less than 5 projects a year. So mastering complexity has a tangible impact on the bottom line of enterprises.
Wow, those stats speak for themselves. And I mean, I would imagine then that the task is to keep or even boost the agility that autonomous business units create with their own particular applications and API ecosystems, especially amid the increasing tech sprawl that they also perpetuate. But for business leaders that are listening anywhere in the world, what kind of advice would you offer on where to begin on a journey like that?
It sounds like a bit of a scary journey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it always starts with acceptance. Like API complexity is not here to stay, but it's here to grow. So you may as well embrace it. And for enterprises to grow, try new things and be successful, it is key not to restrict the freedom and the autonomy of the different business units or regions. When it comes to technology choices, like our advice is really to adopt an open approach to API management. And by that, I mean that all enterprises have a central team that is responsible for the overall approach and management of the different integrations and APIs and data across the enterprise. And this team should employ a central management plane that provides them the visibility and gives them the overall governance of all the different API management vendors and APIs across the enterprise. Which enables the different business units and region to remain autonomous and do whatever they want. And this is essentially what Amplify, our API management platform, does. And it does so in a very non-intrusive way. And we also offer a unified catalog, which is a central repository of all the different APIs from the different providers and deployments. So the teams can really govern all these assets centrally.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research and I learned that you believe that teams need creativity and flexibility to bring that journey to life. Is that something you can expand on?
Absolutely. So let me give you two concrete examples from our customers why the different teams want to adopt different technology choices. So the first one is Novartis, which is a global pharma company. And they have different API gateways because of the different data residency requirements in different countries. So they need different way to manage data access in Europe, in the US, in China, or Japan. Another reason is, for example, BNP Paribas. They actually made a conscious decision at the beginning when they were implementing API management to make each of their 30 international businesses responsible for their own APIs. And they decided that way because they wanted to empower each business to prioritize the API development work that would have the biggest impact on local stakeholders. So they thought, they were confident that this approach would offer greater agility than top-down direction. So these are just two examples to illustrate a point, but there are a lot of other reasons why teams may want to have that flexibility to be creative.
And I was also reading that Axway recognises that companies want the freedom to use different API vendors for different solutions, but they also need that freedom to manage all the APIs as they see fit and have that control. But I think they also need to be freely access all of their data without being locked into data silos, which again, there's nothing worse than that. So can you tell me more about how you work with businesses and maybe offer, a use case or a client story of how you're helping businesses overcome challenges just like that?
My favorite use case is actually that of Permata Bank. I think that's a great use case about how we really help them unlock the data being in silos and across legacy systems. Yeah. So Permata Bank is an Indonesian bank that was born out of a merger of 5 different banks. So imagine the complex maze of different legacy solutions that are not compatible with one another. They're really hard and expensive to maintain. So Permata Bank decided to create a modern digital API-driven platform. And so all their products and services were offered as APIs as well. And thanks to that, they could offer other products and services via those APIs to over 1,000 different fintech partners in Indonesia. And essentially, those fintech partners included these different products and services in their own apps and solutions that then they were marketed to new users. And what's really important to point out is that in Indonesia, there are actually 150 million people without a bank account. So they are out of reach of Permata Bank. But thanks to those fintech partners, Permata Bank reached the market of these unbanked customers and grew its customer acquisition almost 4 times over 3 years without hiring new staff or opening new branches, which I just find fascinating. So this is definitely one of my favorite stories in terms of how businesses can really get APIs or how can they unlock data in the legacy and siloed systems.
Love that. And the question I've got to ask, of course, is what's next for Axway? Where do you go from here? Is there anything you can share about what you're going to be focusing on for the next 18 months and beyond?
So I think we have exciting times ahead. We are definitely focusing on our Tame It or Tame IT message. And the idea behind that is that to be successful and to delight your customers, you really need to master the complexity of your IT and your APIs. In other words, to tame it. So this is something we're going to be focusing on. Another area of focus is to really make our customers successful on Amplify, on the API management platform that masters that complexity. And we are obviously continuing to build out new capabilities for the solution, including API Marketplace.
Well, I wish you the best of luck for the future with that. And we did kind of start talking about your origin story at the very beginning of this podcast. And now we've come full circle. Before I let you go, I'm going to try and have a little bit of fun now and say, was there a particular song or piece of music that has been the soundtrack to your career and how those worlds of legal and APIs and technology and product marketing, as they all collided, is there a particular song that helps you gets your head in the zone? Is there anything that springs to mind there?
I love this question. So I must admit, I'm a sucker for Australian music, especially hip hop.
Yeah.
But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite band called Sandblast. They're actually a ukulele rock band. And my favorite song is called Morgan, and their music just makes me really happy and is linked to some of the happiest moments in my life. So it always fills me with great energy. And I often listen to them when I have to write some long white paper or, help me get through the day.
You had me at ukulele rock band. I will be adding that to the Spotify playlist. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more about Axway, what's the best way of finding you online and contacting your team?
So listeners can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. And there is many different ways to get in touch with us on our corporate website, axway.com. And it's really anything to emailing, to scheduling a demo. So it's very easy through there.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today. Yes, about API ecosystems complexity and how if it's left unmanaged, it will dramatically slow down enterprises. But as that complexity is growing, it also offers an opportunity. But more than anything, I've just loved hearing your backstory too and how those worlds collided and what put you on this path. But more than anything, just thanks for sharing all that with me today.
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. It was fantastic.
Welcome to the age of APIs, which I think are the unsung heroes in tech, especially in businesses, because they deliver so much value. But only a few people can grasp the complex world in which they reside, and very few people actually care enough to look under the hood anymore, because I think we've become collectively quite lazy because we just expect things to work. Not too many people are interested in looking under the hood and investing time of how it all works. But that's a podcast for another day. So over to you. I want to hear more about your experiences with APIs and API vendors, how you're uniting data, and anything else that springs to mind. So whatever it is, if you've got any questions, pictures to come on the show, or share your experiences, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You'll find me at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it from today's episode and our conversation about APIs. We'll explore another area in technology tomorrow and talk about how it's solving problems and creating value. So all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.